Nobody Wants to Read Your SHT by Steven Pressfield. Let me tell you about a writer who once got hired to rewrite a script for an adult film. I know, weird place to start a conversation about great writing, right? But stick with me, because sometimes the best lessons show up in the strangest places. So this producer meets our writer for breakfast. He's fed up with typical porn movies, especially how the story just dies whenever a sex scene starts. He gives the writer 2 rules that would change everything. First rule, make the sex scene advance the story. Whatever's happening between the characters, the detective and his client, whoever, their relationship needs to be different by the end of the scene. Someone reveals a secret, a new problem pops up. The story has to move forward. Our writer's mind was completely blown. He suddenly realized this applied to everything. Think about how many action movies basically pause for a car chase, or musicals that stop dead for a song that goes nowhere. Second rule, never write me a sex scene where nothing happens but the sex. Always have something else going on. Maybe the husband's coming home early. Boom. Now you've got suspense. The scene isn't just about sex anymore, it's about not getting caught. That writer was Steven Pressfield, and that one breakfast taught him more about storytelling than 4 years of drama school ever could have. Pressfield's the guy who wrote epic historical novels like Gates of Fire and the modern creativity Bible, The War of Art. But here's the thing. Success didn't just happen for him. For almost 30 years, he was basically a failure. He drove trucks, picked fruit, worked in advertising, and wrote novel after novel that nobody wanted. He was broke, divorced, and literally living in his Chevy van. The book we're diving into today, Nobody Wants to Read Your SHT, is everything he learned on that brutal journey from failure to success. It's built on one uncomfortable but incredibly freeing truth. A truth that matters whether you're writing a novel, starting a business, making YouTube videos, or just trying to make your history teacher care about your essay. By the end of today, you're going to understand this truth in your bones. You'll see why the world's indifference isn't a curse, it's actually a challenge. And you'll discover the key to earning the most valuable thing on earth, someone else's attention. The first and most important lesson Steven Pressfield ever learned came on day 1 of his first writing job. It wasn't in some fancy university or peaceful writer's retreat. It was in the shiny, sterile offices of a New York ad agency in the late 1960s. He was a junior copywriter, super excited to finally be in the creative department, and the lesson was this. Nobody wants to read your SHT. Think about it. You don't want to watch commercials, right? You see them as interruptions, time wasters, garbage, trying to sell you stuff you don't need. You hate them. Everyone does. This is the fundamental reality for anyone creating anything. The world isn't sitting there breathlessly waiting for your novel, your screenplay, your business plan, or your song. People are busy. They're tired. They've got their own problems. Before they even see what you've made, they already kind of hate it, because it's just one more thing demanding their attention. Now this might sound harsh, maybe even cruel, but Pressfield says it's actually the most powerful and clarifying thing a creator can understand. When you truly get that nobody wants to read your SHT, your mind becomes laser-focused. You stop thinking like a self-obsessed artist and start thinking about the reader. You begin to understand that writing, or any creation, is a transaction. The reader gives you their time and attention, which are their most precious resources. In return, you have to give them something worthy of that gift. You develop empathy. You learn to constantly put yourself in your audience's shoes and ask, is this interesting? Is it fun? Is it compelling? Am I giving them enough, or are they getting bored? This is the heart of the craft. It's not about you, it's about them. So if the audience is naturally resistant, how do you break through? The answer, which Pressfield first learned in advertising, is the power of a concept. A concept isn't just a catchy slogan. A concept takes a familiar idea and puts a brilliant spin on it, making the audience see it with fresh eyes. One of the greatest examples ever was for Avis, the car rental company. They were a distant number 2 behind Hertz. Being number 2 seems like a negative, right? But their ad agency created a concept that flipped that negative into something powerful. We're number 2. We try harder. Suddenly, Renting from Avis wasn't settling for second best. It was choosing the hard-working underdog who'd give you better service because they had to. It completely reframed everything. This principle isn't just for selling rental cars. It applies to the greatest works of art. Take Homer's Iliad. The Trojan War lasted 10 years. A lesser storyteller might have tried telling the whole tedious history. But Homer understood the power of a concept. He focused his epic not on the entire war, but on one slice of it, the wrath of Achilles. The story's about what happens when the Greeks' greatest warrior gets his pride hurt and refuses to fight. From that single, powerful concept, the entire epic unfolds. We watch the Greeks start losing, the Trojans gaining confidence, and we're waiting for the moment when Achilles finally returns to save the day. That's a high concept. Understanding this was huge, but it wasn't enough. Learning theory is one thing. Mastering the craft is something else entirely. And for that, Pressfield had to walk a long, lonely road of failure. For years, he quit his advertising jobs to write novels, only to find himself completely lost. He was, in his own words, clueless. He'd never heard of things like three-act structure, inciting incidents, or theme. He was just a guy with a typewriter, trying to write his way out of his own confused mind. He knew his writing was phony, inauthentic, full of effort and fakery. He was the hero of all his own stories, using writing not to give something to a reader, but to plant his own ego on the planet and prove to himself that he existed. He knew this was bull. He was fighting a demon he couldn't name, an invisible internal force of self-sabotage whose only goal was to keep him from finishing his work. He'd get so close to the end, and then he'd quit. It was his pattern. He knew he had to kill that dragon, or it would kill him. After 26 months of torturous work on one novel, he finally typed the words "The End." The book never sold. Neither did the next one. But that moment was everything. He felt a dragon he'd been fighting his whole life drop dead at his feet. He'd learned the most critical skill for any professional. He'd learned how to finish. But he still hadn't learned how to tell a story that anyone else wanted to read. That lesson would come, once again, from an unexpected place, Hollywood. After years of failing with novels, Pressfield decided to try screenplays. He moved to Los Angeles and starved for 5 years, writing 9 scripts on spec. None of them sold. But in that failure, he was finally learning the foundational principles of narrative structure, the universal laws of what makes a story work. The first law was 3-act structure. Every story, whether it's a joke, a seduction, or a blockbuster movie, has a beginning, middle, and end. A hook, a build, and a payoff. Act 1 hooks the audience and sets up the story. Act 2 builds tension, raises the stakes, and complicates the hero's journey. Act 3 pays it all off with a satisfying climax and resolution. It sounds simple, maybe even formulaic, but Shakespeare used it, and so did the ancient Greeks. It's the deep architecture of how we experience stories. Within that structure, he discovered the timeless pattern of the hero's journey. Made famous by the success of Star Wars, which was built on this model, the hero's journey is humanity's primal myth. A hero starts in an ordinary world, gets a call to adventure, meets a mentor, crosses into a special world, faces trials, confronts a villain, and returns home changed. This pattern, Pressfield realized, is like an operating system, hardwired into our souls. When a story aligns with this deep template, we feel in our gut that it works. When it doesn't, we walk away feeling unsatisfied, like something was missing. Hollywood taught him the specific, practical mechanics of building a story on this foundation. He learned that every story has to be about something. It needs a central idea, a theme, that holds everything together. In the show Breaking Bad, for example, the theme is stated right in the pilot episode. Walter White tells his chemistry students that chemistry is the study of change, of transformation. And from that moment on, every single scene in the entire series is about transformation, especially the transformation of Walter White himself. He learned that every story needs a clear beginning, an event called the inciting incident that kicks the narrative into gear. In the movie Rocky, the inciting incident is when the champion, Apollo Creed, picks Rocky's name out of a book and decides to give this local club fighter a shot at the title. As soon as that happens, we know what the climax will be, the two of them fighting in the ring. A great inciting incident has the climax embedded within it. You learn that the second act belongs to the villain. Once the shark's in the water, you keep it front and center. The scarier the monster, the deeper the danger for the hero, and the more the audience cares. And most importantly, he learned the secret to creating unforgettable characters. You have to write for a star. This doesn't just mean writing for a famous actor. It means creating a protagonist who's the absolute center of the story's universe. Their desires drive the plot. The stakes for them are life and death, whether physically or emotionally. They have a monumental passion they'll pursue to the gates of hell. And critically, they have both an outer journey, the car chases and love affairs, and an inner journey. They must change. They must evolve. James Bond is cool, but he's actually a weak character because he never changes. A true star role, whether it's Huck Finn or Captain Ahab, undergoes a profound transformation. Armed with these powerful principles, Pressfield made a fateful decision. An idea for a story came to him, a mystical tale about golf called The Legend of Bagger Vance. But it came as a book, not a movie. His agent fired him, telling him he couldn't afford to wait around while Pressfield indulged his literary fantasies. But this time, something was different. He was 51 years old when his first novel was finally published. After decades of failure, it felt like an overnight success. But it wasn't magic. It was the culmination of everything he'd learned. He was bringing all the hard-won principles from advertising and Hollywood to fiction. He knew his novel needed a concept. It needed a theme. It needed three-act structure, a hero who embodied the theme and a villain who represented the opposite. He knew how to start, how to get through the horrible middle, and how to finish. He'd learned how to be a professional. He also realized these storytelling principles weren't just for fiction. He began to see that nonfiction is fiction. When he wrote his nonfiction book about the 1967 Arab-Israeli War, The Lion's Gate, he structured it like a movie. Who was the hero? Who was the villain? What was the theme? What was the climax? By treating factual events as a story, he could make them powerful, engaging, and meaningful for the reader. Even self-help books, he argues, are stories. The War of Art is structured in 3 acts. The hook defining the problem, resistance, the build presenting the solution, turning pro, and the payoff exploring the higher meaning of the artist's calling. The reader is the hero, resistance is the villain, and the author is the mentor. This brings us to the deepest layer of Pressfield's philosophy. The struggle to create isn't just a technical challenge, it's a spiritual battle. There is a devil, and its name is resistance, that force of self-sabotage, that merciless evil radiating off the blank page. But there's also a muse, a positive creative force that delivers ideas that seem to come from another world. The artist's job is to enter the void, tune into that cosmic radio station, and come back with something. So how do you know which idea to pursue? Among the million ideas swimming in your brain, which one is yours to bring into the world? Pressfield has one final piece of advice. Write your white whale. Like Captain Ahab, you have to find the one idea you're compelled to hunt, the one you're driven to pursue. And you'll know which one it is because you're scared to death of it. Mediocre ideas don't make your heart race. Great ones make you break out in a sweat. This pursuit will demand everything you have. You may, like Ahab, feel lashed to this beast, grappling with it even as it drags you into the depths. But this is the artist's calling. And so we come full circle, back to that brutal, beautiful truth. Nobody wants to read your SHT. What it really means is that nobody wants to witness your self-centered, ego-driven demands for attention. But they do want the gift that only you can give them. They want the blues you can sing, the shoe you can make beautiful, the story that takes their understanding of life a little bit deeper. The journey of a creator is an education in editing out the ego, in stepping away from self-concern, until what you offer is purely for the reader's good, not your own. It's a journey of transforming your raw, messy, self-indulgent ore into solid, glistening gold. Do that, and they won't just read your SHT, they'll treasure it. As we reflect on Steven Pressfield's work, what strikes me most is its profound and practical honesty. We live in an age that often romanticizes creation. We're told to follow our passion and be authentic, as if those things alone are enough. But Pressfield comes to us like a seasoned, battle-scarred sergeant and tells us the hard truth. Passion is useless without discipline. Authenticity is meaningless without craft. The most powerful lesson in this book for me is the reframing of structure. So many young artists and creators fear structure. They see it as a cage, a formula that'll stifle their creativity. Pressfield shows us the opposite is true. Structure isn't a cage, it's a skeleton. It's the strong, invisible framework where true creativity can flourish. Without the bones of three-act structure, a story is just a shapeless blob of ideas. Without the spine of a central theme, a narrative wanders aimlessly. It's by mastering these universal principles, the same ones used by Homer and Shakespeare, that we earn our freedom to be truly creative. This idea that nonfiction is fiction is another game changer. How many of us have sat through boring presentations, read dull reports, or listened to meandering speeches? The creator failed because they thought presenting the facts was enough. They forgot that humans aren't wired for data, we're wired for story. Whether you're pitching a business idea, giving a toast at a wedding, or teaching a class, if you can learn to frame your information as a story, with a hook, a build, and a payoff, with a hero and a villain, with stakes and a climax, you'll connect with your audience on a level that facts and figures can never reach. So how can we start applying these powerful ideas right now? Here are 3 simple actions you can take. First, before you begin your next creative project, no matter how small, ask yourself Pressfield's foundational question: what is the concept? Don't just start writing or designing. Spend time thinking about the unique spin, the fresh angle that'll make your work stand out. What's the one-sentence idea that reframes the entire issue and makes it irresistible? This single step can be the difference between work that's ignored and work that's unforgettable. Second, practice empathy by embracing the transaction. For the next week, with every email you write, every comment you post, every paragraph you draft, stop and ask yourself, what am I giving the reader in return for their time? Am I making them laugh? Am I teaching them something useful? Am I making them feel understood? This forces you to cut the fluff, to be clearer, and to always serve your audience. Finally, start seeing stories everywhere. Take a movie you love and actively deconstruct it. Find the 3 acts, pinpoint the inciting incident, identify the hero's all-is-lost moment and their final epiphany. Doing this just once or twice will train your brain to recognize the deep architecture of storytelling, and you'll begin to instinctively apply that structure to your own work. In the end, Steven Pressfield's message is one of tough love, but it is love nonetheless. It's a call to take our creative work seriously. It's a demand for professionalism. But underneath it all, it's a deeply optimistic belief in the power and importance of art. The world is a noisy, chaotic, and indifferent place. But a well-told story, a beautifully crafted offering given with generosity, still has the power to cut through it all. The struggle is immense. The dragon of resistance is real. But the calling to create and to connect is one of the most noble pursuits we can undertake. That was a summary of Nobody Wants to Read Your SHT by Steven Pressfield. We've certainly hit the big ideas today, but I want to be honest with you. A summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It can show you the landmarks, but it can't give you the feeling of the sun on your skin or the scent of the air. The real magic happens when you walk that road yourself, And the same is true for a book like this. It's in the quiet moments, when one of Pressfield's brutally honest lines hits you in a way you didn't expect, that the real change happens. This summary is your map, designed to help you decide if this is a journey worth taking. If anything we've talked about has struck a chord, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just learning. It's an experience that can fundamentally change the way you approach your work and your life. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, it would mean the world to us if you'd hit that like button and subscribe to Billionaire's Bookshelf. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another book that has the power to shape our lives for the better. Thank you for joining me. Let's keep growing together.